So, are you ready, Joey? All right. Well, we're here for the Intro to New Testament Greek, Week 2. Last week we reviewed the alphabet and a few pronunciation rules, not very many though. Today we'll go over more pronunciation rules. And so we'll get started. But let's start with prayer first. Father, we're thankful for your word. We're thankful for the opportunity to look at insights into the way that you actually had your word inspired. And so we ask that your blessing be on your word, and as we talk about the insights, and I ask that you'd help each one who's trying to learn Greek to be able to grasp and hang on to the material. We ask that you'd bless our time together in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, congratulations, you came back. I appreciate you all and your interest in Koine Greek, and it shows you that you really want to understand God's Word better. After this week, memorization is optional. Last week we had the alphabet, that's quite a bit of memorization. This week we got some pronunciation rules, not as much memorization. We'll continue to work on the alphabet, but we have some other pronunciation things to keep in mind. And remember that if you kind of sort of try, you kind of sort of get results. So, it does take work. But the good news is you've done a lot of the work so far. The work for today, this may look like a lot. Today we're going to review the alphabet. Okay, that's not hard. By the way, we're going to be reviewing the alphabet every day, every week when we meet together. So it's, you need to work on it on your own, but we'll continue to work on it here too. So today we also have the introduction to vowels, which includes diphthongs and the diaeresis and the iota subscripts. We'll look at breathing marks, accent marks, punctuation, apostrophes, and syllabification, because we don't want slobification. This may look like a whole lot, but it's really not a lot of memorization. Mostly it's just noticing these things, recognizing them, know what to do with it when you see them, and it's not really a lot of heavy memorization. The only real memorization in this section will be the diphthongs. But if you keep the keywords in mind, I think that'll be easy too. So first thing, let's review the alphabet. Again, concentrate on the lowercase letters, and we'll just start, and I'll say them, and you can repeat them, and we'll go through them all. Ready? Alpha. Beta. Gamma. Delta. Epsilon. Zeta. Eta. Theta. Iota. Kappa. Lambda. Mu. Nu. Xi. Omicron. Pi. Rho. Sigma. There's a beginning of the word, the middle of the word. This one is the end of the word. Okay, so it's what they call a final form. Tau. Upsilon. Phi. Chi. Psi. Omega. All right, let's try it again without the words. We'll just go through them again. Alpha. Beta. Gamma. Delta. Epsilon. Zeta. Eta. Theta. Iota. Kappa. Lambda. Mu. Nu. Xi. Omicron. Pi. Rho. Sigma. Sigma final form. You don't have to memorize it that way, but sigma final form. Tau. Upsilon. Phi. Chi. Psi. Omega. All right, very good. Now, when it comes to, I think I double tapped there. I did. Before we complain about Greek word pronunciations, consider this statement. Yes, English can be weird. However, it can be understood through, it can be understood through tough, thorough thought. I'm glad I was born with English, because I'd hate to have to learn this as a second language. When you look at this and you got all these OUs in here, and all of them are different. It can be understood through, tough, thorough, and thought, So sometimes every language probably has some difficulty, and Greek is pretty straightforward. It's nice that you don't have any silent letters. That helps too. But we do have some things like when we have a gamma that precedes either another gamma or kappa or kasi or chi. The first gamma, but only the first one, has an N sound. And so when we have the word here, angelos, the first gamma has an N sound, and then we get the G sound, angelos. And that's where we get the word angel. And of course, when we spell it in English, we insert the N there the way that the word sounds, but it's spelled with two gammas in Greek. So angelos means a messenger or an angel. And then we have the gospel, the good message. When you see you on the front, it often means good. And then we have angelion, which is related to angelos. The angelion is the message. And so we have the good message, or the good messenger. Well, it's the same thing. We have two gammas. The first one sounds like an N, and the second one is the G sound. So euangelion. And then we have a gamma with a kappa. And the gamma, again, is going to have an N sound. And then the kappa will still sound like a kappa. So this is sun koinonos. Sun koinonos. Means a co-participant or partner, fellow worker, or something like that. And then we have a gamma followed by a chi. And of course, this one again sounds like an N. And so it'll be splanknon. So you got that N, splan. It's not really an N or a nu. It's a gamma. Slanknon. I think the word spleen comes from this. It means entrails, but it's usually used in the sense of like deep feelings. Entrails, like who was it? Mark Lowry said, it gives new meaning to you move me, baby. So, and now in the last example here, we have a gamma followed by a xi. And so again, this sounds like an N. So we got larynx, larynx, we got nx, larynx. And that means throat. That's where we get the word larynx. Okay? So those are examples when a gamma is followed by either another second gamma or by a kappa or a xi or a chi. Now, a little bit about vowels. You don't have to memorize these, but it's pretty easy. The vowels in English, A, E, I, O, U, right? A, E, I, O, U. And in the same way in Greek, we're going to have the alpha. So A, we get the epsilon for E, iota, I, omicron, O, upsilon for the U. So that takes care of most of them. Now the alpha, iota, and upsilon might be long, they might be short. And really long and short, when it comes in English, long and short changes the way it sounds. Like the long A is an A sound, but the short A is an ah sound in English. Or the O would be ah for short and O for long, And In alpha, iota, and upsilon, they don't change the sound at all. The length of the vowel only relates to how long you make the sound, and we don't really do that. Since it's a dead language and we're mostly reading it, we don't worry about that. But sometimes it can change when words morph by contraction and stuff. It does affect them, and it's good to understand that if you're a first-year Greek student or beyond. But for this class, that's really beyond the scope. So don't even worry about that. Just know that they can be either long or short. The epsilon and omicron are always going to be short. The eta and omega are always going to be long. The epsilon can lengthen to an eta, so can an alpha. The omicron can lengthen to an omega. So when you just think of that, you really, if you remember A, E, I, O, U, and just relate it to the Greek letters, it's really not hard. Not a lot of memorization that you need on this. Diphthongs. A diphthong is a combination of two letters, or two vowels, more specifically, that together produce one unique sound, unlike the original sounds of the vowels. The second letter is always either an iota or upsilon. So you have two vowels. The second one is going to be iota or upsilon. That's the diphthong. And so if you can remember these English helping words, it'll really help you out. So when you see the alpha and iota together, it's not I, like there'll be separate pronunciations, I. It's I, as in aisle. We do the exact same thing in English with the A and I as the alpha iota. So alpha iota is in I is in aisle. Epsilon iota, we do the same thing with weight or 8. You can take the W off, however it's easy for you to remember. But we do the A sound with the EI in English, and in the same way, the epsilon iota in Greek makes that A sound, weight. Oi, omicron iota. We do the same thing in English with O and I. Foil, or even you drop the F off and just oil, the oi sound. And then we, the upsilon iota, we as in sweet. Those are all the ones ending with iota. Then the ones ending with upsilon, we have the alpha upsilon. And again, of course, this comes from German, but it still works for us because we use the word in English. Sauerkraut, ow, that's the ow sound. Instead of au or something like that, by keeping the letters separate, it's ow, as in sauerkraut. And you actually get two of them in there, with sour and also kraut, the ow sound. The epsilon upsilon sounds like U, as in feud. And the omicron upsilon sounds like U, as in through. Okay? So if you remember aisle, I is in aisle, A is in weight, oi is in foil, we is in sweet, ow is in sauerkraut, hu is in feud, and u is in through, then you won't find too much trouble with the diphthongs. There are two other ones. One is the omega upsilon, which doesn't show up in the New Testament at all. If you get into reading classical Greek, you might run into it. But basically, it's not really handled as a diphthong. It's handled as what the sound would be, ou, the two letters put together. And then there's the eta upsilon. And we do see that rarely, but we do see it in the New Testament. And there's a couple of ways of doing it. You can put the two letters together like the other one and just say au, or use the same feud, u, as the epsilon, upsilon. So examples. Let's just go down this way. We got I, a, oi, ow, oo, we, and you, you and both of them, you. So the I is in aisle, A is in 8 or weight, oi is in oil or foil, ow is in sauerkraut, oo is in soup or through, as either works, we is in sweet, and you as in feud. And here's some example words. Iro. Iro means I take away, or I pick up and take away, or something like that. Iro. We got the alpha iota together, I, rho. And actually, a, all by itself, is a word all by itself. It means if. A. And we have oikia, oikia, home or house. Autos means he, or yeah, we'll just leave it at that. It has other uses, but it could be same or self, but most of the time it's going to be he, the preponderance of the time. So au, as in autos. Ude, it's actually a compound word. U is not or no. We looked at that last week. De is and or but. So this would be and not, or sometimes neither or nor or something like that. Ude, so we have u, and then huios. We'll talk about this in a little bit. It's got a rough breathing mark up here, this little backwards apostrophe. That gives you an H sound. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So we get the we sound, but this is going to have an H in front of it, huios. So we'll talk more about that later. It means son. So you see that word quite a bit. Every time you see Jesus refer to himself as the Son of Man, or he's referred to as the Son of God, or anybody else referring to a son, huios. And then we have euthus. If you're reading Mark, you'll see that quite a bit immediately, because he uses that word a lot immediately. And then euxonin, that's has to do with growth. Okay. Now, do we know what a diphthong is? What if you put two vowels together and they're not supposed to be pronounced in a unique way? Then they have what's called a diaeresis. A diaeresis looks like this, with the two dots. Maybe I should get rid of some of my drawings so we can see it better. There we go. When you see the two dots over the second letter, then you don't say I as in aisle, you say I-E, which is similar to naive in English, which is also not an English word. I think probably French or something. I really don't know. But anyway, it's pronouncing the two letters separately instead of as a unit. This word, diaeresis, it actually is a biblical word. It comes from the New Testament. It's only used 3 times, though, and all 3 instances are in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 4 through 6, and have to do with the fact that we have one Spirit, but a diversity of gifts. And that word for diversity, that's diaeresis. No, it's not going to let me. Right there. That right there. The diaeresis, so we have a diphthong right there. Diaeresis means a distinction, diversity, variety. Then we need to look at iota subscripts. Now this is the closest thing we have to a silent letter, because with the iota, we can see it here in these examples. We have an alpha, and then we have this iota subscript here. We got an eta with the iota subscript. We have an omega with the iota subscript. You don't pronounce those. When you have letters moving around and contracting, or vowels that are interacting with each other, there are cases where this iota, it'll be a part of the spelling, but it'll go down underneath the vowel. You don't pronounce it, and for this class, we don't have to worry about it. If you're taking Greek, first year Greek, then it's something you'll have to pay attention to, because this will indicate to you something about how that word's being used in a sentence. But for us, right now, when you see the first one here, that's just going to be ah. This one's just going to be a. This one's just going to be o, as far as the way you pronounce it is concerned. It is a part of the spelling of the word, though. It's not like it just doesn't exist or you can leave it off. You really have to have it there. The eta and omega are always long, but whenever an alpha becomes long, and if it's followed by an iota, the iota will subscript. So anyway, you just need to know that that's an iota subscript, and you do not pronounce the iota. And if you get further into Greek, then you'll learn that there's more. The next thing is breathing marks. We talked about this a little bit ago. Every Greek word beginning with a vowel or a diphthong will have a breathing mark. It'll either be a smooth breathing mark, which kind of looks like an apostrophe, or it might be a rough breathing mark that looks like the opposite of the apostrophe. Smooth breathing marks do not affect the pronunciation. If it looks like that, you can just ignore it and just go ahead and pronounce your letter like you normally would. But the rough breathing mark does indicate that an H sound should precede. We saw the word huios earlier, and so it's that had this rough breathing mark right here. So this thinking of the H sound and trying to remember which is which. If you had a snowplow, and you can say, well, I'm really an artist, and it's got the plow like this, it's not going to push the snow much. If you have a snowplow and it is like that, it's going to make a real scraping sound as it goes down the road. And that scraping sound, that's rough. Okay, that's how you can remember that curve is rough breathing, and when you see that curve, you need to give it an H sound over that vowel or diphthong. So, rough has the H sound. Smooth does not affect pronunciation at all. And think snowplow. At least that's what it helped me. It may not help you. If you got something better, you go ahead and go with it. But this is what I thought whenever I was first learning Greek 40 years ago. And I thought, well, that kind of reminds me of the blade of a snowplow. It's kind of rough. Of course, living in South Dakota. Well, I wasn't in South Dakota at the time. I was still in Kansas 40 years ago. Words beginning with rho always have a rough breathing mark. Words that have rho somewhere else, in the middle of the word, the end of the word, there's no breathing mark over it. It's only when a word begins with a rho. All right. Breathing marks are written over the top of lowercase letters, lowercase vowels here. We have an example. Ego. Ego. It means I. It's where we get the word ego. And you see we have a lowercase epsilon, and we have a smooth breathing mark. The snowplow is not moving much snow this way, so it doesn't make any sound. All right? So it's just ego. Whenever you have diphthong, two vowels together, like over here in this has got a rough breathing mark, so we got to have that H sound. So this is going to be hutos, hutos. So it's the oo, but it has a rough breathing, so it's going to be hu, hutos. It means this. It's this as opposed to that. It's the near demonstrative. This one instead of that one. That is the far demonstrative, and hutos is this. It's the near demonstrative. So when there's a diphthong, it comes over the second letter. And if it's a capital letter, uppercase letter, this is an uppercase epsilon, just like this is a lowercase epsilon over here on ego. If at the uppercase, it actually puts the breathing mark ahead of it because there's no room over the top of it. So it starts off with a breathing mark, whether it's rough or smooth. In this case, it's a smooth one. And so this is N, and it means in. That's an easy one. You'll remember that one. Words with a rho, like we talked about, always has a rough breathing mark. Upsilon, if a word starts with upsilon, of course it's going to have a breathing mark because it's a vowel anyway, but with an upsilon, it's always going to be a rough one. Okay? Let's see, is that it? Yes, and sometimes you have to watch the breathing marks. This doesn't happen very often. That's why I say in a few cases, it doesn't happen very often, but breathing marks can change the meaning of a word. There aren't many words like this, but we have N with a epsilon and a smooth breathing, so it's just pronounced N, and it means in, just like this one we looked at with a capital epsilon. This was lowercase, but it just means in. However, if you put a rough breathing on it, it becomes hen, and it has nothing to do with laying eggs. or chickens. It's a hen is the neuter form of the word for one, the number one. But is it n or hen? Well, if it's hen, it's one. If it's n, so that's the only difference in the spelling is the rough breathing for one or smooth breathing for in. Same way with ace. Ace is a preposition. It means into. Well, in is also a preposition. Ace is a preposition meaning into. But haste, notice that it's rough breathing. It's over the second letter, of the diphthong, just like the one into. It's over the second letter. We have the epsilon iota here, epsilon iota here. This has got the rough breathing above it, so it's haste, and it also means one, but this is the masculine form. Okay? So you just have to watch the rough breathings. For us, for the purposes of this class, we're mostly just pronunciation. When you see that snowplow above the letter, you know it's going to be an H sound for it. Breathing marks examples. Smooth breathing. Apostolos. We haven't talked about accents, but that's an accent right there. Here's the beginning letter. It's a vowel. It's got smooth breathing. There's no H sound. Apostolos. And apostolos is where we get the word apostle. So we don't pronounce anything extra with a smooth breathing mark. Rough breathing mark, we have hooper, which either is going to mean on behalf of or in behalf of or above, depending upon what word follows it. But that's the rough breathing mark over a single vowel. Before an uppercase letter, we have E, A, sus. We'll be talking about dividing up into syllables in just a little bit. But we have a capital iota, therefore the breathing mark has to come first. It is smooth, and so there's no H sound or anything. And this is the name of Jesus, Iesus, Iesus. And then we already looked at hutos, and hutos is the breathing mark is rough, and it's over the second letter of the diphthong, and it means this one. All right, accent marks. The good news is you don't have to really know any rules about accent marks at all. And further good news is if you're taking first year Greek, you still probably don't have to really know much about the rules of the accent marks. You will want to notice certain things once you get into first year Greek because accent marks can change, and there'll be indicators like a contraction. If you have a contraction, it'll change from one accent mark to a circumflex or something like that. But it's not something that you have to know a lot of rules for. You just need to recognize them. It's thought that originally the accent marks indicated pitch changes. And so when you see the acute, we have the acute accent mark, which is this one right here. This looks like that. So you're reading the word across this way because we're reading from left to right. And so when you see that accent mark, you've got with the tone of your voice. Or you have the grave accent mark right here over theos, and it goes this way, and then you say, you bring the pitch down. And then the circumflex is right here, but you can have two different kinds of circumflexes. I just right over to the top of that thing again. The circumflex, it depends on the font that is being used in the book. Sometimes it'll look like the bird's eye thing, like what we have down here, or sometimes it'll actually look like a tilde. And so it's thought that it would, or and that's the way they think that the accent marks originally may have worked. And some languages, as I've heard, still do that to this day. But that's all you really have to know, is recognize the accent marks. We got the acute, grave, and circumflex, and you don't even really need to remember their names. Just know that it's an accent mark, and then what you do is you punch that syllable. For us, like I said, it's a dead language. We're not speaking it. We are reading it. We're reading the New Testament. So when you come across a word like this one, aiteo, we see a diphthong here. I is an aisle, right? Aiteo. Hit that word, hit that syllable right there, aiteo. That's the accented syllable. The word for God, theos. Theos. The accent is over the os. Theos. And then the circumflex, which you can't really see. I'm going to try to see if I can get rid of that. There. Now you can see it. Whoops. So we see a rough breathing mark, ha-ga-nos. Ha-ga-nos. Ha-ga-nos, purely. Now, in the same way as we saw the breathing marks can sometimes be useful in identifying a word. Sometimes, in a few cases, it doesn't happen very much at all, but there are times when you have to pay attention to the accent mark because you have tis, or tis rather. Tis can mean who or what. It's asking a question. Fact is, when you see that accent mark over tis, you can kind of put a little mark above it and say that's like an a question mark. Put a question mark over the top of it. It's asking a question. Tis can mean who, but tis without an accent mark means someone, anyone, a certain one. It's indefinite. So that's the main thing to remember on accent marks. Just punch that syllable. That's all. We don't have to really learn anything else. Like I said, not a lot to memorize. We do have the diphthongs, I is in aisle, A is in 8. We have those, but that's most of the memorization for tonight. This is just recognize, okay, it doesn't matter whether your accent mark's going at a slope this way or slope that way, or whether it curves, it's an accent, and we just punch that syllable. Punctuation. There are only 4 punctuation marks in Greek, in the Greek New Testament. 2 are exactly the same as English. The period and the comma. They look exactly the same. Not a lot of heavy memorization. And even the semicolon, or sometimes it might perform the place of a colon, but most of the time it's going to be a semicolon. It's like a floating period, or it's the top half of the semicolon. If you had a semicolon, you'd have a little comma down below this, but if you only see this part and you don't have that part, then that's actually a semicolon in Greek. Okay, that's not hard either. It's just the bottom part of the semicolon is missing. The only one that's really a little confusing is the question mark, because it looks like a semicolon. So when you see this in Greek, that's not a semicolon, it's the question mark. So that's really the only hard one. Again, not a lot of heavy memorization in this. Apostrophe. Again, not heavy memorization. We do the same thing in English. Whenever we have a missing letter, like we don't write, if we're not writing do not, we could write do not, but if we say don't, we're going to get the do, and then we're going to put not, but we're not going to put the O, we're going to put an apostrophe in there, and the apostrophe tells us that the O is missing, right? Same thing in Greek. The apostrophe marks a missing letter. For instance, in Greek, the word apa, it's a preposition, it means from. Now, when the next word starts with a vowel, you get 2 vowel sounds right next to each other, it's difficult to pronounce. So they just drop it, and it turns into op. So when you see op, but it's got the apostrophe, then you know that, okay, there's a letter missing. And so you don't have to pronounce it any different. When you're reading and you come across apa, you say apa. When you're reading and you say op, or when you see op, you just say op. Okay? It doesn't change anything. Most of the time when this happens, it's going to be a preposition. That's why I have a preposition as an example here, apa, because most of the time you see it, if it's a preposition that ends with a vowel, that's where you're most likely going to see an apostrophe, a missing letter, because when the next word starts with a vowel. And some conjunctions. Prepositions and some conjunctions will do this, but not all words. It's really not that widespread. Again, you don't have to memorize anything. It's just information. You got to understand it exists, but it's not something that's completely foreign to us. We know about this in English. We do the same thing in English. Now, to pronounce a word, you have to get your syllables correctly. And it's important to do that, to break a word into syllables so you pronounce it correctly. If you're going to be memorizing any vocabulary words, which are not a part of this class or the course, we're not learning vocabulary words, but even like learning the alphabet, you want to always say alpha. You want to say it alpha. You don't want to say alpha, apha, whatever. You want to make sure you say it the same way every time, and it's going to help you to memorize it. In the same way, when you're working with vocabulary words, it helps if you pronounce everything exactly the same way all the time. And therefore it's important to get the syllables correct. There's not a lot of difference between syllables in English and Greek. We split up words in English to pronounce them without really even thinking about it. You don't think about it unless you're looking at a dictionary and they have first syllable dash, second syllable dash, or maybe the accent mark there, to tell you which syllable you punctuate for the accent. But by and large, we don't even think much about syllables. And if you're reading the label on a prescription bottle, you don't know where to put it, But you can still kind of break up the syllables a little bit, even with words like that. So, if you're struggling with syllables, though, there's 7 rules that can help. And the 7 rules are: every Greek word has as many syllables as it has vowels or diphthongs. Therefore, there is 1 vowel or diphthong per syllable. That's pretty easy. So we have logos. We have an omicron. We have an omicron. 2 omicrons. 2 vowels, 2 syllables. Logos. Logos. Word. Now we have a diphthong. A is in 8, right? A is in weight, whichever one you want to use. A is in 8. I like 8 because it starts that way. And we have an eta, and we have another eta. So we have 2 vowels, the eta and the eta, and we have 1 diphthong, the epsilon iota. So 3 vowel pieces, so it's 3 syllables. Eirene. It's where we get the name Irene, but it means peace. In fact, you may have heard me sometimes when I'm teaching, I'll say, Shalom Lechem, it's peace to you. And sometimes I'll also include Eirene Humin. That also means peace to you, but that's Greek, Eirene. There was an old song, Good Night, Irene. So, good night, peace. Anyway, Eirene with 3 vowel sounds, diphthong, 2 vowels, 3 syllables. So, down here at the bottom we have a, k. Let's do that. A, k, ka, men. And then we see we have an acute accent mark there. So that's the one we're going to punch ka. So we have a, k, ka, men. A, k, ka, men. Of course, it's not written that way. You're going to see it all put together like this. And it means we have heard. A-K, ka, amen. A-K, ka, amen. So we have heard. So, vowels. 1 vowel per syllable. All right? Rule 2, a single consonant by itself goes with the following vowel, and if the last letter is a consonant, it goes with the preceding vowel. The second rule, or the third rule, 2 consecutive vowels that do not form a diphthong are divided. So here we have an epsilon and an omega. That's not a diphthong. They're not together. Those are 2 separate syllables. So we have a rough breathing. So this is going to be he, o, ra. There's our accent mark. Ka, men. He, o, ra, ka, men. He, o, ra, ka, men. You're right. He, o, ra, ka, men. That means we have seen. Of course, it's written this way, not with colors and lines, but that's why we're looking at this, is to learn how to separate these out. A consonant cluster that cannot be pronounced together is divided. Like take this one, we have a mu and a p right next to each other, and a mp doesn't fit real well. So you divide the syllable there between m and p. So we have m, pra, then. We don't have trouble putting the the S and the TH together. Imprusthen. It means in front of or before. Imprusthen. It's a irregular preposition. And then Christos. Christos. That's Christ. Okay? And so we have, let's see, a consonant cluster can be pronounced together, goes with the following vowel. Yeah, so we have the st. That's easy. We do st all the time in English. And so those go together well, so we don't have any trouble putting stos together. Christos. All right? Double consonants are divided. Did I miss one? Did it jump? No? 4, 5. Yeah. Yeah. Consonants that can go together do go together. Okay. Double consonants are divided. So we have ro and ro. So that just forms a natural division there. So this is par, re, si, and this is the accent, so we hit that one. Paresia, paresia, boldness, clearness, something like that. When Paul spoke before Festus or before King Agrippa, he said, I can speak with boldness. Somebody, I don't remember who it was, he was speaking to somebody, he said, I can speak with boldness. And this was the word paresia. And so compound words are divided where joined. Here we have Antichrist, Anti-Christos. And so when you have two words put together, you break them apart as for the syllables. So, and that is really about it as far as learning the syllables. Not that hard. Again, not a lot of heavy memorization. It's mostly going to flow naturally, but this should be in the notes, if I remember right. And so if you have any trouble with trying to figure out where the syllables are, you can go back and review that. So let's go ahead and review the alphabet again. We have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. Now I tried to show this time when I underlined, I don't always do it, but this time I tried to show you where the descenders are too, by putting the lines in the right places. I'll try to do that. All right, last week we looked at u and may when they're put together. U means no or not. May means no or not. And they have particular rules about their usage. But we looked last week at when they're put together, when you have u and may right next to each other along with certain verbal form. We didn't really talk about the verb. We might look at that later. Or actually, I think at the back of your notes, in the notes PDF I sent out, the last page has a summary, and I think I have a note in there about what the verbal form is. But we'll just not worry about that yet, because we won't talk about verbs for a few weeks. U and may both mean no, and there's rules about how they are used. We'll talk more about that later. However, we've seen when they're used together, they make the strongest possible negative in Greek, negating even the possibility. No possible way. Remember that? I think it's pretty cool to see that kind of emphasis in Greek, and that we don't always see it in English. Now, another use outside of the dictates of the verb is in negative questions. For instance, if I said, "You're not going to the store after class, are you?" It's obvious I'm expecting a no answer. If I said, "You're going to the store on the way home, aren't you?" Then I'm expecting you to say yes. So that's how we do it in English. Now, they do the same thing in Greek, but they don't do it that same way. But they do have a way of saying questions with a yes or no answer. And it depends on if they're using u, they're expecting a yes, and if they're using may, they're expecting a no. And the translations don't always make it clear to us that the question is even being asked in a way that it can expect an answer of yes or no. So even though both words mean no in normal use, negative questions are an exception. When may is used, a negative answer is expected. When is used, an affirmative answer is expected. Might also want to note that doesn't always look like that. When the next word starts with a consonant, it does look like that. But when the next word starts with a vowel, then it becomes ook. Or if it's starting with a vowel with a rough breathing mark, it'll be ook. And so, but it works the same way. This is like a and an in English. We might say a table. Go bring me a table. And it could be any table. It's not specific, a. But if we say bring me an apple, well, apple starts with a vowel, and so we add the in to the behind the a. It's still indefinite. And if I said the apple, now we're talking about, or the table, now we're talking about a specific thing. We'll talk more about that in a few weeks too. But doesn't always look like sometimes it's ook or ook. Okay? So, John 18, verse 17, 25, and 26. These are all questions posed to Peter. They just had the Last Supper. Jesus told Peter, before the cock crows, you'll deny me 3 times, right? And so Peter followed from afar. He was hanging around with the people in the courtyard of the priest, warming himself by the fire. And the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter, you are not also one of this man's disciples, are you? Now, your translation might say it that way, or it may not say it that way. But the point is, she's expecting a no answer. What a crafty way to be used by the devil to get him, to lure him in to giving a no answer. Well, you're not one of his disciples, are you? Well, no, of course not. Well, it was easy because that was what was expected. That was the expected answer. The next verse. Now Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. Therefore they said to him, you are not also one of his disciples, are you? And so we can tell from this that it is the may, that may is the word being used there in both of these verses. May is being used and they're expecting a no answer. Now this next one, ook, is used. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him whose ear Peter cut off, said, did I not see you in the garden with him? Or that's probably the way most of the translations say it. But it's really saying, I saw you in the garden with him, didn't I? It's expecting a yes answer. So those are some examples of and may used in negative questions. Now we're going to just zoom in on and look at only. When is used, yes is expected. So we look at Matthew 24:2. We get the bonus. There's also an may in there. Jesus said to them, do you not see all these things? Assuredly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. What he said is, you see all these things, don't you? He's expecting a yes answer, all right? And then he says, assuredly I say to you, no possible way will one stone be left on another. And so we have a bonus there. Mays. But he's expecting a yes answer. You see all these things, don't you? John 11:37, and some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? Or, said differently, this man who opened the eyes of the blind, he could have kept this man from dying, couldn't he? They're expecting a yes answer, all right? Matthew 7:22, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? These could be rephrased. They're all expecting a yes answer. All of them use the but you can't even tell in a translation here. These are all from the New King James. You can't even tell they're expecting specifically a yes or no answer. They're saying, Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name, didn't we? We cast out demons in your name, didn't we? And we did wonders in your name, didn't we? They were expecting yes every single time. So this is a part of the insight that you get when you're looking at the text in Greek as opposed to the English translations. You don't always catch the nuance there of what's being expected. Now, the flip side of that, may, where may is used. I'm actually going to compare two different translations here. The first slide, we're looking at the New King James, and the next slide will be the New American Standard, New American Standard Bible. John 3:4, Nicodemus said to him, "How can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born?" And about that time you go, "Nicodemus, are you an idiot? What kind of an answer, what kind of a question is that? That obviously can't be the case." Well, you don't know when you're reading some translations. We'll look at the next one and we'll see it differently. John 4:12, "Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?" This is a woman at the well. She's talking to Jesus, and so somebody could look and say, "Well, yeah, Jesus is greater. Of course he is." But that's not what's being said here. And the one I really like a lot here is John 4:29. "Come see a man who told me all the things I ever did." Still the woman at the well. "Come see a man who told me all the things I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" Okay, these are all from the New King James Version. Now let's look at the New American Standard. As we read the New American Standard, we see that no is expected. In John 3:4, Nicodemus said to him, "How can a man be born when he is old? He cannot enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born, can he?" He wasn't even putting that on the table. There's no reason to look at Nicodemus and say, "What are you, an idiot? You're supposed to be the teacher of Israel. You're supposed to be the smart guy, and you don't know." You actually think that may be what he's talking about, but he was not seriously putting that on the table. He said, "I know you're not talking about this. So what are you talking about?" That's how he's asking his question. He's expecting a no answer. A man can't enter his second time in his mother's womb and be born, can he? That's not what you're talking about. So what do you mean born again? Nicodemus was not being an idiot. He was being, like I say, when you read it, recognizing that may is used, then it just makes more sense that way. 4:12, "You are not greater than our father Jacob, are you, who gave us the well and drank from it himself and sons and cattle?" Obviously, she's expecting a no answer. All right? And then the last one, John 4:29, "Come see a man who told me all the things that I have done. This is not the Christ, is it?" And you go, "Well, wait a minute. She just got through telling Jesus, well, when Messiah comes, he'll explain this to us." And he says, "You're talking to him." Messiah's here. He's the one talking to you. You're talking to him. So he told her who he was. He said he was the Messiah. And she comes into the town and talks to the people and says, "This is not the Christ, is it?" She's expecting a no answer. But in this case, I don't think it's because she doubted it. I don't think that she came to town and told the people and said, I don't think he really is. He told me he's Messiah, but I don't think he is. I think that was good thinking on her part, because this was a woman with a bad reputation. Jesus said, "Go get your husband." She said, "I don't have a husband." He said, "That's right. You've had 5 husbands, and the one you have right now is not your husband." This was the kind of woman, she would come into town and says, "I just met the Messiah. The Messiah met me out here." You think, right, Messiah's going to come to this town, and if he does, he's going to talk to you? You're one of the scumbags of this city. You're not. If you were a nice, holy woman, then that might be believable. But he's going to talk to you. And so I think this is good thinking on her part. She goes, see, that would have been the response. Messiah appeared to me. I talked to the Messiah. Right. Nobody does anything. But she comes in and she says, "This is not the Christ, is it?" "Well, I don't know. I'll go out and see." And that's exactly what they did. They all started going outside the city to Jesus. And Jesus, he saw the fields white to harvest. So these people coming to him. And so I think that was good thinking on her part. But anyway, you get the fact here that it's expecting a no answer. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, 29 through 30. This is from the New King James Version again. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Are all workers of miracles? Do all have gifts of healings? Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? And I have talked to people and they said, well, yes. However, when we look at the New American Standard, this is one of the places the New American excels. And anyway, it's so looking at the same passage, all are not apostles, are they? I mean, it's more laborious to read, but you're getting what he's saying. Okay, he's expecting a no answer. All are not apostles, are they? All are not prophets, are they? All are not teachers, are they? All are not workers of miracles, are they? All do not have gifts of healings, do they? All do not speak with tongues, do they? All do not interpret, do they? No, 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 no. Every time, all 7 of them, no. He's expecting a no answer. Now, again, on the last page of the PDF, I have summaries of the insights, and these are listed there, so you don't have to write them down. I've got them written down for you already, but I have some other examples where places where yes is expected and places where no is expected answer. Because we're running out of time, we can't look at any further, so I rather than go through them, I just made note. This is not an exhaustive list. There's more. I don't even know how many there are. I'm not sure I've ever researched that to find out how many negative questions there are. I don't know how many there are, but that's why we learn Greek. Then when you go through it, then you go, oh, okay, they're expecting a no answer. Here's what looks like a semicolon. It's a question mark, and yet it's a negative question because it's got oo or may there, and then you know what the expected answer is. Now, just for some clarification, I was comparing the New King James to the New American Standard, and I'm not trying to trash New King James. There are places where I prefer the readings in the New King James over the readings of the New American Standard. I just picked these verses because this is one of the places where we see the strengths of the New American Standard. What I am trying to show is that translations may not always convey the nuance from the Greek text. Therefore, it's best to read from multiple translations in order to get a better picture of the meaning of the text of the original languages, or better yet, learn Hebrew and learn Greek. That's the best way. But if you haven't got time for that, to learn about these things is good. And to use translations wisely is good. In the original 1611 King James Version, in the notes from the translators to the readers, they said, "Therefore, as St. Augustine saith, that variety of translation is profitable for the finding out of the sense of Scriptures, so diversity of signification and sense in the margin, where the text is not so clear, must needs do good, yea, is necessary as we are persuaded." Excuse me. So what does that mean? What they mean is, some of the King James only people do not like the New King James Version, and one of the reasons they'll say they don't like it is because the New King James Version has marginal notes that will list alternate translations. And they say, that's all wrong. The King James Version doesn't do that. They just tell you what it says, what it means, and they don't put those marginal notes in like the New King James. And they'll put down the New King James Version because it does it. What they don't realize or understand is that the original King James Version in 1611 had these same types of marginal notes with alternate translations. They don't show up in the modern versions because we're not using the 1611 version. We're using, I should have checked beforehand, it's 1700, sometime in the 1700s. I think it's the Oxford version. But all those notes have been removed. But in the notes to the readers, from the translators to the readers, they said it's helpful. And the reason for that is you can have words. Let's just say this is a word, and this is the amount of meaning it has. All right? Now we're going to translate that in English. We're going to use this word, but this word is like this. And so there's meaning over here that this word isn't showing, and there's meaning to this word out here that isn't really related to this word. But when you have marginal references or alternate other translations, maybe they use one word, one translation uses this word, but another translation will use another word, and so they're covering different parts of that meaning, and so you can get a more full understanding of the meaning of the word. It's not a code where one exactly, here's one language, here's the other language, and they exactly match. It just doesn't probably rarely ever works out that way, if it works out that way at all. There's usually something about it that's different. So when you're reading multiple translations, you go, okay, well, why did this say this differently? Well, then you can do some research on the words and find out why this translation chose this word and why this one, where's the overlap, what's the nuance of that word, and you can begin to figure that out. So anyway, it's good to look at numerous translations. In this case, if you're looking at the NASB, you would have been able to see they were expecting yes and no answers, for these questions, whereas in the New King James, it doesn't excel at that. But every translation has strengths, and every translation has weaknesses. And what I have found is often the strengths are also the weakness. We'll talk more about translations later. I don't have to get into that right now. I need to be wrapping up. So we'll talk more about translations. But before we go, one more time, or at least one more time. Is it 2 more times? Yep, 2 more times. So we have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau. Yeah, final form sigma, there you go. Tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. And then finally, the real trial. We will still go back and review on following weeks, but it's good to learn it this way too. So we're going to start off with alpha. We're going to finish with omega. So we have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. All right. So, homework. Continue to work on memorizing, reviewing the alphabet. It's important. And if you get the lowercase letters done, then go ahead and get familiar with the uppercase letters. You want to be able to recognize the vowels. You don't have to memorize them, but just kind of, if you look at it and say, yeah, I know that's a vowel. Just remember your English vowels and then think about the fact that the eta can be a lengthened epsilon and the omega is a lengthened omicron, and you'll have them all. Memorize the diphthongs. This is real important for pronunciations. These are the 2 vowels next to each other that come up with a different sound. So we have I as in aisle, we have A as in 8, and so forth. Use the English helping words. If you memorize those helping words, it helps. That's why they're called helping words. It helps. It really does. Okay, then recognize the diaeresis. That's the 2 dots above what looks like could be a diphthong to tell you to pronounce them separately. So recognize the diaeresis and the iota subscript, which you'll see the iota below a letter. It might even be hard to tell that's what it is, depending upon the font, but we don't pronounce it, but it is an important part of the spelling. Recognize the breathing marks. You have the smooth, and then you have the rough. Of course, those are over the letters like that. Recognize the breathing marks and pronounce the rough breathing mark with an H. It has an H sound. Recognize and stress the accented syllables. Recognize, you don't have to memorize anything about the accents, just know, oh, that's an accent mark. This is the one I need to punctuate. This is the one I need to emphasize, okay? Just recognize the accented syllables. You don't have to do anything else with an accent mark. Okay, so then punctuation, and as we said, that's very much like English. The comma and the period are just like English. The semicolon looks like it's only half of it. It's the floating dot, and then the only one that's really going to take you a little bit to remember is if it looks like a semicolon, it's the question mark. Recognize the apostrophe, just means you have a missing letter. And then on page 9, that was something I was going to correct. If you have old notes from this class before, it's page 8, but if you get the new PDF, it's page 9. There's a worksheet there, and we'll review that in the next session. The worksheet, I'll just mention it quickly, it's got 4 sections in it. The first section, it's actually English words written in Greek letters. You have to take the Greek letters, exchange them back into English letters, you'll have an English word, okay? But the next 2, the second and third section, actually are phonetically spelled. You have to be able to pronounce the Greek word right. If you pronounce the Greek word right, you should recognize an English word. You're pronouncing an English word, all right? The third section is the same way. It's phonetically written. You're going to pronounce it, and if you pronounce it correctly, you'll be able to recognize an English word. However, this is also going to include smooth and rough breathing marks. So we're just building up to it, first recognizing the letters, but you're going to carry it across. So each letter will be represented in your English answer. But the next one, the next 2, it won't be spelled correctly at all. You're going only off the way it sounds. It's phonetically spelled. So if you have questions on it, let me know. And then the bottom section is just the punctuation. So, we'll go over that in the next session. Get the answers, make sure the answers are correct. And then last thing is have fun with the Greek alphabet. After you've worked on your homework page, and you can write the phonic notes, which is what the second and third section are all about. It's phonetically spelled. English letters in Greek, English words in Greek letters. Then oo, as in through or soup. And this is you, can, write, I as in aisle. You can write notes, I as in aisle again, like this. This is a capital uppercase sigma. Send notes to your spouse or friends. Remember, the zeta is a DZ sound. Zeta. Friends. Rough breathing. Who are learning. Here we got 2 gammas. The first one sounds like in. Learning Greek. We is in sweet. It is like, I is in aisle, it is like a secret code. And so it'll help you to remember the letters. It'll help you remember how they sound, and you write these things out. It's just an exercise to be fun and to continue to learn. So that's it for tonight, and work on those things, and we'll get together next time. And this is the end of the heavy learning. Everything else from now on, you sit back and you watch. And Bruce will talk about how nouns work in English and how nouns work in Greek, how verbs work in English, how verbs work in Greek, how adjectives work, not in that order, but how adjectives work in English and how adjectives work. I'll talk about English grammar and I'll talk about Greek grammar, and you just have to take it in, because all we're doing from this point on, working on the alphabet and stuff, but from this point on, it's all basically, how does Greek work? That's what you're really in this class for, is how does Greek work? Because that'll give you a clue on how we can see things like nuance and precision and definiteness, emphasis. That's how you'll see these things. And you'll see, I can see how that can happen, because it doesn't work like English does. It has this. And then when you're reading a commentary or something that talks about the Greek language a little bit and uses a term, you'll have in your notes all these terms. You'll be able to look it up and know. And I'll mention them, talk about them, You don't have to memorize them, but if you ever run across them or somebody says something, you have a place to go and look them up. So that's where we're going from now on. From now on, it's all laid back from this point on. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.